It's on TV, this meeting. Hello.
Okay, welcome to this meeting of Development Management Committee tonight. I'll just go through the preliminaries first. This meeting this evening will be live streamed meeting to the public. A record of the public part of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Would remote participants please use their hands up icon in Teams to indicate they have a question? Please turn your camera and microphone on when addressing the committee and off when you're not speaking. Would members and officers please remember to switch their microphone on when speaking and off when they have finished speaking. Please speak directly into the microphone. I think that's so far, so I'll go on to evacuation procedure. Should be emergency evacuation from the council chamber is turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at St George's Square. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Chair, apologies received from Councillor Chaudhry and Councillor Campbell, Chair.
Minutes of the previous meeting on the 30th of November. Are you okay with those? Agreed. And I'll sign them later. Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act. Any declarations? None that I can
Chair.
Any disclosures of interest this evening? Either just they mention it either now or when the item comes up. Any urgent business?
Urgent business, Chair.
So we'll go straight on to the first item. There's only two items tonight, so no need to switch it around. We'll go Lesser Hall, 4854 John Street, page 30. And it's Susanna. Well, oh, are you up there?
Yes.
Right.
I shall share my screen if.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. There is a verbal update to the application in that paragraph 2 within the recommendation should include delegated authority to the head of planning regarding making amendments to conditions if necessary, and also within the section 106, the inclusion of local goods and services together with parking restriction particulars, given the site is in a town centre location. This application seeks the full planning permission for the conversion and change of use from student accommodation to 14 flats, 13 of which are 3-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom unit. Working through the presentation, the first slide shows the existing building within the plot of the site location plan. The application site is located on the south side of John Street. The proposed application is located within a conservation area and is within close proximity of Luton Town Centre, bus and railway links. The site originally formed student accommodation and has now been vacant for some time. The next slide shows the existing frontage of the building. And following that, the next slide shows the proposed ground floor plan, which shows the amenity space, communal areas, cycle storage and bin and waste provision. The final slide shows the proposed elevational details. I'll now move on to the assessment of the application. There is a significant requirement for additional housing within the borough. The site is located within a highly sustainable location and makes use of a redundant building, and the provision of larger units is always welcomed. The application site comprises of existing building where no major external alterations are proposed. Where external changes are to be made to fenestration, this is considered of benefit. The building has been designed to be in keeping with the massing, scale and materials of the area, and these characteristics will not be altered. All 14 flats achieve an internal floor area consistent with the national space standards. All habitable rooms within the development would benefit from appropriate degrees of light penetration and outlook. Furthermore, the application site provides adequate outside amenity space for residents. Whilst as noted, there are 2 objectors speaking this evening. Throughout the application process, there have been no objections raised in relation to the scheme. The report put before Planning Committee concluded that no adjoining buildings would be significantly impacted by the proposed development, and where relevant, a condition has been imposed in relation to noise risk, construction management and lighting at the site. As I've stated earlier, the site is situated within a highly sustainable location. Whilst there is no opportunity for provision of on-site parking, it is considered that such provision would in any case be inappropriate and contrary to the Council's aims to address climate change and promote sustainable modes of transport. To that is acknowledge that the site is within comfortable walking distance of both the nearest bus and train station. 14 cycle parking spaces are proposed within the site. The applicants have undertaken a viability appraisal at the site, which has concluded the development proposal is unable to support the provision of any contributions toward affordable housing, education and sustainable transport. Given this conclusion, the local authority has requested an independent review of this appraisal. This independent assessment has concluded that the scheme cannot meet all the demands from the local planning policy requirements. However, through gesture of goodwill, the applicants have put forward and agreed to provide the sustainable transport contribution, which totals £4,900. The independent advice received is that this is more than reasonable and should be accepted. A review mechanism would be required within any Section 106 agreement, given a viability assessment has been undertaken for this development. For the reasons above and the reasons set out in depth in the report, the application has been put forward for recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Any specific questions by members? You will get another opportunity. Okay, I've got 2 registered as objectors, both online. Donald Bearwall, are you there?
I am here, yes, Chair.
Neil Glover, are you there also?
Yes, I am.
Okay, the rules are that it's up to 5 minutes to speak. It's in there are 2 of you. You can have 2.5 minutes each, or anything up to the 5 minutes. So who wants to go first?
Donald.
Donald? Okay. Time starts when you do. Are you still there?
I am. Can I see? Can you see me?
Hello, are you there? Donald?
Donald, yes, I'm here.
Yes?
Okay, can I go? I can wait for Neil to go first, but I don't mind going first.
Yeah, please go ahead, Donald.
Okay. Basically, I saw this item on the council's website. Excuse me. And I thought I need to say a few words before you make your decision.
I can't hear anything that you're saying, and I don't think other members can as well.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Basically, I'll start again. Basically, can you see me okay?
Yes.
You can, yeah, okay.
It was okay up. Yeah, you're fine now.
Okay, excellent. Basically, I saw this item on the council's website and I thought I needed to say a few words before you make your decision. It's disappointing that we got flats again coming to committee. There's too many flats in Luton town centre. Well, in Luton, period. What we need is housing for our communities. Yeah, when I say communities, I mean, you know, people with families, young people with growing families. Okay, and there's simply not enough houses being built. Yeah, it's okay to have lots and lots of flats, especially under the PD route, but there's subsidized flats. But what we need is proper family units, i.e., houses. You know, and there's simply not enough houses coming through. and they're simply not being built. It seems that every application that comes to committee is for flats and substandard size flats for families we need. So as members, we need you to support more houses for us than flats. Please, can you bear this in mind in the future? For young growing families, because it's okay people living in them flats, but after a while they grow out of the site, they grow up out, you know, go up out of the flats. They need someone to go after the flats. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks for being so brief. Neil Glover.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I want to sort of concur, or actually want to say what agrees with what Donald said, actually. So I think, first of all, it's sort of a real disappointment that the current building's being retained. Like Donald said, I think more housing is needed, especially for the future of our town. And there's so many flats in Luton. As you drive through Luton, around the town centre, around the areas, there's hundreds and hundreds of flats. And I think, you know, these buildings, and being a bit of someone sort of to recycle, you know, we need something more energy efficient, something to reduce climate change. You know, I think the existing building that's from the 1970s isn't really cutting it for me. And I think housing is really important. We hear the government talking about housing, and not flats. And flats, you know, I think houses just it's just really disappointing that flats are there, and we just need to have some sustainability of housing in our community. So I would strongly recommend that we reject the scheme, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the objectors? Do you want to say anything about that? It's a completely different issue.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just come in here and remind members that the application before you is for a conversion. It's not for the redevelopment of the site for housing. So although the objectors have suggested housing is important, that's not before you to make a decision. It's purely whether the proposal of conversion of student accommodation to residential accommodation, albeit flats, is acceptable or not. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sonny. Any questions by members? Yeah, I mean, I do understand what the development manager has said, that we love lots and lots of houses in the town.
Yes.
But we don't have the land. We try to cooperate with Central Beds also, but we can only determine what comes in front of us, and that's what we've got today. And it's accommodation. It is housing. Well, in Luton, we've still got quite a substantial amount of poor quality old Victorian buildings that we call housing. At least the houses that have been built and the flats that we've been built are good quality accommodation for people to live in. Okay, any comments by members? So, oh, sorry, the applicant, yeah. Got the applicant next. Renu Prashar Pinja, online. So you've got up, the rules are you've got up to 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, and can you
and
hear me?
Questions. I can hear you loud and clear.
And you can see me?
I can.
Good. Good evening, members of the committee. I am the agent for the applicant. In reference to the officer's report, which is very well written, this is a development which is primarily doing internal changes, keeping the building as it is, which includes the windows from sort of the first floor up. We're keeping the windows. We're going to repaint them as per the approved colour. We're not going to be demolishing the building, therefore not creating any significant amounts of demolition waste, noise or dust. It's a vacant 70-bed student accommodation, which has been vacant for some time now. And the proposed development is seeking to provide 94% of 3-bedroom units. So those are units where a family could live within the town centre location. With a single 2-bed, the site next door, which is Lawrence House, that was given consent, and that's primarily 1 and 2-bed units. So as those two buildings combined provide a much bigger choice of size and type of accommodation for the people of Luton. With regards to the the viability information, as the officer has said, we've spent a significant amount of time, effort, seeking independent advice, negotiating, and the officers are happy with the advice that was provided independently based on our submitted viability assessment, and we are going to enter into a Section 106 to secure that, as well as paying the monitoring fees and everything else we need to do. In terms of sustainable development, it's in the town centre location, so it's a car-free development because it's got very good transport links. And again, those measures for a car-free will be secured by a Section 106. 14 cycle spaces have been provided, as already set out. In terms of the 3 objectives of sustainable development as set out in paragraph 8 of the NPPF, the economic objective, it's investment into an area of Luton that hasn't had much investment, increase revenue locally by spending power, and as well as local supply chain. The social objective is providing a clear identified need for larger units within the town centre and creating a range of homes within a location to provide more choice for people. And the environmental objective, which it makes an effective use of an existing vacant building with very minimal demolition and very minimal external changes. And the changes that are being made will improve the building as it is. And it's an effective use of the site and stopping a redundant site being in place. I'm also here to answer any questions should you wish to.
Okay, thank you very much. Any question to the applicant's agent? Councillor Franks.
Did your client consider before submitting this planning application the possibility of demolishing this building and building something that actually could add to the character of the area?
No, they wanted to use the existing structure because it is structurally safe. It's not an old building. I believe it got consent for student housing in the mid-90s, early 90s. So from a financial and environmental point, it didn't make sense to demolish a building that's already there.
Thank you.
Any further questions to the applicant's agent? Thank you very much. I'll go to members. Any comments by members? Councillor Franks.
Looking at buildings like this, it's hard to imagine what you could possibly do to it that wouldn't actually be an improvement. But I really believe the applicant here has achieved the impossible. There clearly is an opportunity to improve. I mean, look, John Street generally is nothing to write home about, is it? We should be looking for any developments in John Street to improve the environment and to make a positive contribution to the conservation area. This application doesn't do any of that, doesn't do any of it at all. Given that the likelihood is that, as with most homes are being built around the town these days, it's going to be occupied by people from St Albans and London because they can't afford to buy flats where they live. It'll actually contribute very little to the housing shortage that the town faces. And given that the opportunity to actually improve the appearance of the building has been missed, I find it very difficult to put my hand up and vote for it, frankly.
Councillor Hussain.
I think it is regrettable that obviously we can have a lot more improved building in the town, but it was approved by the members for a student accommodation, and I'm certain that those members that sat on it could have really put condition to a better building. But unfortunately, we have what we have at the moment, and I think there is no restriction who comes and lives in it, whether they come from London. We're hoping that these people living in Luton who are able to, afford to pay the rent or to buy it. But it is not a restriction that somebody coming from London shouldn't be able to buy a house in Luton. So I'll be supporting it.
Any other comments? Whilst I tend to agree with some of the comments that have been made, the redeeming features are it's an empty building being brought back into life in the town centre. And it's 13 3-bed flats and 1 2-bed. Okay, no further comments, then we'll go to the vote. The recommendation is to approve with some additional conditions. Seconded. Eunice?
Thank you, Chair. I'm starting with Councillor Adbley.
4.
Councillor R. Ahmed. Oh, it's not here. Councillor Ali. No, not here. Councillor Bridget.
Against.
Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor M. Hussein.
4.
Councillor Kershid. 4. Councillor Masood.
4.
Councillor Taylor. Chair.
4.
Thank you. That's 5 to 2.
5-2. Planning permission has been granted, subject to the conditions in section 106. Thank you. Next item, Hitchin Road. 532 Hitchin Road, page 53.
Thank you, Chair. There has been one minor update to the application in that paragraph 2 within the recommendation should include delegated authority to the head of planning regarding making amendments to the conditions if necessary. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 3 2-storey, 2-bedroom detached dwellings after demolition of the existing 2-bed bungalow. Working through the presentation, the first slide shows the existing site plan. The next slide shows the frontage of the existing site with the bungalow in situ. Following that, the next slide shows the proposed site plan. As you can see from the site plan, the plot is irregular in shape. Along the side and rear boundary is a pedestrian access. An additional slide has been included to show the difference between the existing site, the bungalow, the dismissed planning appeal previously on the site, and then the proposed development put before you tonight. It is also annotated on the plans the existing tree within the public footpath and the root protection zone for this. The last several slides show the elevational details both in 2D form and also in 3D form to show you how they respond to the street scene and plot shape. Following through to the assessment of the application. There is a significant requirement for additional housing within the borough. The site is located within a sustainable location and provides good-sized family homes. Additionally, being of high-quality design, it is considered that the principle is acceptable. The proposal comprises of 3 2-bedroom detached dwellings with gable roof forms. The site has been subject to a previously dismissed appeal decision, which was for the erection of 5 flats with associated car parking, cycle storage, refuse storage and residential amenity following demolition of the existing house. However, the design of the current scheme is significantly reduced in scale and height, which has been illustrated in one of the slides. The eaves and ridgeline is below that of the neighbouring two-storey dwelling house. Whilst the proposed dwelling house would sit higher than the neighbouring bungalow, the impact of this is reduced, and should be noted that the variety along the street scene makes this design acceptable. These design changes are considered to respond to the appeal decision, which reduces the scale and size of the development and provides an attractive row of detached family housing, which is a much needed thing in the borough. Furthermore, the amended plans have been submitted, which show landscaping to the frontage of the site. This breaks up the hard standing and visually enhances the character of the area, which is further improvement in the overall design quality following the submission of the original drawings. The proposed development responds well to the plot size and shape of the site, whilst ensuring design and impact on the street is minimised. It is important to note that the previous appeal decision accepted that the proposal did not result in overdevelopment of the plot, and the current proposal put before members tonight is that of a significantly reduced scheme in terms of scale and massing. Various concerns have been raised by residents in relation to loss of light, visual intrusion, privacy and overbearing. Given the position of the proposed plots, the property most affected by the proposal would be that of number 534 Hitchin Road. The proposal, as previously indicated, will change the street scene visually. However, the overall impact would not be so adverse as to warrant a refusal. Other concerns relate to the impact of the trees that are not within the boundary of the site and are in fact in a public highway. The inspector within the dismissed appeal did not raise any concerns with regards to this element, and as a result, the proposed development now put before you would be smaller in scale to that previously dismissed appeal and further away from the root protection zone than the existing bungalow on site. Moving on to the highway impact, following consideration of the application and agreement from the highways officer, amendments have been made to the parking at the front of the site to allow additional landscaping to the frontages of each plot. Given the council's aims to address climate change and promote sustainable modes of transport, the parking arrangements on site are considered acceptable. Not only this, it would also address some concern in terms of impact on street scene, given that landscaping frontages are proposed, which removes the hard standing parking areas which previously covered the entire front of each property. Furthermore, each plot has 2 cycle storage provisions shown on the proposed site plan. It would be reasonable to impose a condition to ensure this element is implemented and the location is secured. For the reasons above and reasons set out in depth in the report, the application has been put forward for a recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got on my sheet to speak is Councillor Wynne as the ward councillor. I've got Claire Walsh is also in person, and also the applicant agent is here tonight online. So the objectives first. I don't know, David, do you want to go first, or I'll let Claire Walsh go first?
I would prefer the residents go first, Chair.
Okay. Claire Walsh, can you come forward? There's a microphone there, please. And the time limit, you've got up to 5 minutes to speak. And I'll let the ward councillor speak if you want to use the 5 minutes. So your time starts now, or whenever you speak.
These comments are drawn from the collective concerns of the immediate neighbours. We are very concerned that the application has been accepted and validated by LBC when it contained incorrect information. The plans were not drawn and executed to the requirements of the National Planning Regulations or LBC's LLP guidance. The application did not contain the relevant documents LBC require. Under the section Trees and Hedges, the applicant has ticked the box No. The applicant's own planning proposal includes photographs of the property on pages 4 and 5, clearly showing trees both on the development site and on adjacent plots. The statement by the applicant is therefore factually incorrect. However, the applicant references the mature oak tree in their planning proposal on page 16 under the heading Impact on Neighbouring Trees. The applicant states the council considered that this tree would not be detrimentally affected. Under pre-application advice, the applicant has stated that no assistance or prior advice was sought from the local authority. Mrs. Malik, the case officer at the time of the consultation period, confirmed in an email dated the 3rd of November that she had not provided such an insurance about this tree and that she was consulting with the council's arboriculturist. The outcome of this consultation is not in the report. Either the applicant has provided a false statement on the planning proposal or they have made another inaccurate statement on the planning application. We request that the committee investigate who provided this advice. The applicant states that the planning inspectorate who reviewed and denied their first application did so only on the size and appearance of the design. This was given as the main reason, not the only reason. And as the applicant also answered no to the trees question on that application, it is not clear if the inspector was aware of the sheer size and maturity of the trees adjacent to the plot. It is significant that the head of planning in their report has clearly indicated that the oak tree cannot be harmed in any way due to the development and has requested an arboricultural survey be carried out prior to the works beginning. We ask that the survey and this statement be enshrined in the legal constraints of any permission given in principle, not in the appendix only. A tree protection order for this tree was requested on the 5th of June 2021 by email. However, no official response has been received despite 18 months of follow-up emails. We are concerned that no provisions or assurances are made in the report concerning the extremely large willow tree or the cherry tree in the grounds of 2 neighbouring properties that will also be affected. Construction activities where trees are concerned are carried out in accordance with British Standard BS 5837 concerning the root protection area in which construction should not occur. We believe that the development is within the RPA of the trees adjacent to the plot. Damage to trees caused by construction works can take many years to manifest, and we'd like the Development Committee to confirm what safeguards will be introduced to reassure neighbouring residents as to who will hold responsibility if damage to a tree results in loss of life or property damage that is not on the site. Will the council be responsible for such costs? What is the position if the applicant closes his company to limit their legal liability? The report does not address the issues of biodiversity and geological conservation, the rare birds who live in and around the adjacent tree, and what safeguarding process will be put in place. Under authority employee member, the question asks on the application if the applicant has a connection to LBC to identify situations where there may be bias in approval of an application. The applicant has answered no. In the next question concerning ownership, the applicant has confirmed that he is not the sole owner. The other owner's name has been redacted, but the owner's address provided is Highway Services, Central Depot, Kingsway, Luton. This is a Luton Borough Council address. This matter does not appear to have been addressed in the report. However, this raises a serious concern about decision bias. We consider the plans to be an overdevelopment of the plot, and David Wynne will be covering this when he speaks. The 3 properties replacing 1 bungalow have been situated at awkward angles to squeeze them into the limited plot, and as a consequence, it brings the property line forward, not in line with other properties. The applicant has now made significant changes to their application, and therefore the facts of the application on page 58 do not match the original. The changes were made after the public consultation deadline of the 8th of November. Point 27, page 67 confirms changes were verbally approved with the highways officer at LBC, which further validates our request for the other owner and their addresses to be investigated. In the report, there are errors and omissions. Page 56 ends with the word "and," suggesting more to follow, which is not there. The conditions and reasons of 6 on the noise, page 72, has been omitted from the report. 2 windows and a door on the side elevation of 534 Hitchin Road are not depicted on the applicant's plans. This is not mentioned in the report, and the proximity of Unit 1 to 534 significantly reduces their privacy. Yes, I'm on my sum up. We request that the application be withdrawn and resubmitted with all these errors and omissions and conflicts of interest addressed. If the applicant will not do this, we ask that the committee reject the application and invite the applicant to resubmit. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And the applicant is listening, and hopefully we'll try and address some of those concerns that you have. Councillor David Wynne. Oh, any questions by members? Okay, Councillor David Wynne. I'll allow you 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just paint a very quick picture first for those of you who are not as familiar with this site as I am. Hitchin Road is a very busy road, goes from the centre of Stopsky towards Round Green. It's a bus route, very busy. There's always cars parked on the right-hand side, opposite to where this development is being proposed. There are typically no cars parked on the left-hand side because of the nature of the properties. It's the case that this development is in practice an overdevelopment, despite what is said in the officers' reports. This is clearly the case by the fact that the original proposals were reduced from a larger number of houses down to 3. And most recently, and after any public consultation, the number of car park spaces has gone from 6, 2 per property, down to 1 per property. Why? Because otherwise the external amenity area for each of the properties would fall below the national guidelines. You need to look at the diagram on page 54, figure 1. You'll see on that picture, on that drawing, the limit of the actual site and the limit of the development. The development in practice goes across and outside the land registry area of that property's grounds. The path that goes past the property that is due to be developed is in fact the width it is because there is a major substation there and the utility company's vehicles use that for access. This evening, we've also been given a set of amendments, and I have to object, Chair, because a major issue to do with this development is the car parking area and the likelihood of there being issues with car parking and access from Hitchin Road itself. And this is not the time at which we have to see more proposals for parking being put forward. It is out of order for that to be done at this time without any consultation. Let's just look for a moment as well at the houses themselves. They're very small. They're all basically 2 bedrooms, one bedroom downstairs and 1 in the loft area. They're very small, 1 car park space. They're typically going to be inhabited by people where there are going to be 2 cars. That inevitably means issues to do with cars on Hitchin Road. The work done by our transport department was done before these number of car parking spaces were reduced. When there were 2 per house, there wouldn't have been an issue, which is why I guess they've said they have no objection. What we actually need, and there was mention made by the planning officer, that we need these 2-bedroom houses. We heard just a few moments ago about 2- and 3-bedroom flats in the town. The practice is we need 3-bedroom houses as a minimum. And this site, as it is, with the 3 2-bedroom houses, is being overdeveloped. I also believe that the site itself really should be redeveloped, and the bungalow itself that is currently on site should be refurbished and taken into a loft area to become a single 4-bedroom property. That would be both in keeping with the area and would also allow us to have a situation where there was no precedent for overdevelopment of bungalows along Hitchin Road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Any questions? No questions. I'll go straight on now to Adam Hunt.
Hi there.
Agent Mr. Andrew West. So you've got 5 minutes between you, and you've heard some of the comments and questions that were raised tonight, and it would be good if you could try and address some of those, please.
Hi there. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name's Adam Hunt. I'm the applicant and the owner of the site. My architect will speak about the planning aspects of the scheme. I'm here to give you my perspective as the owner and the applicant. When I bought the existing bungalow, it was and still is in quite a dilapidated state, in need of a total renovation. But as you can see from the officer's presentation, it sits on a lot bigger plot than its immediate neighbours. So naturally, I thought the site could be redeveloped more efficiently to generate more much needed homes. So the previous application was for 5 flats. What I didn't expect was how much I would be targeted by some of the neighbours who simply turned my application into almost a witch hunt, whilst other neighbours were very supportive. I was taken back by the local opposition, which was sometimes on a personal level. The application was not successful at appeal, but I was encouraged by the inspector's comments. He felt that flats could be built here, but the scale must be reduced and it must look a bit more traditional rather than more modern design we originally went for. This has resulted in the current scheme coming forward for 3 simple houses. We could have applied again for flats, but I recognise that what is needed is actual houses. I was pleased that your officers liked the scheme and have recommended it for approval. What I was shocked about was again the vitriol from certain neighbours. They again launched a campaign against the scheme, to the point that officers' report points out that they actually were fraudulently registering multiple objections against my application using the same email address. I'm obviously quite saddened by this. Thank you to those neighbours who did register to support the scheme. They see the benefit for Luton in providing the much needed quality new homes. And thank you very much to the members. I'll let Andrew take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, committee members. I just really wanted to follow on from the officer's report, which is very well written, to just reiterate really how, in considering these proposals, significant consideration was paid to the concerns raised by both the residents, the inspector and the officer for the last scheme. And a great deal of weight was given to the inspector's appeal dismissal. The key consideration is that whilst the inspector did not find a principle of the flats to be out of character, he found that a 3-storey flat roof building would be an incongruous and uncharacteristic development. The key concern with this was that the eaves were above those of the neighbouring 2-storey house and above the ridge of the neighbouring bungalow. Given full regard to the site's planning history and the identified concerns of the residents with regards to a scheme of flats, the applicant took these all on board and decided to explore proposals for 3 self-contained pitched roof dwelling houses, more in keeping with the prevalent typology of unit in the area. The previous officer's report for the flats acknowledged that there is diversity in the road of single and 2-storey dwellings, and the site marks a transition point between single-storey bungalows to the north and more typical 2-storey houses to the south. The proposed houses reflect this transition, with eaves and ridge height midway between those of the bungalow at number 534 and the 2-storey house to the south at number 530. The proposals also have pitched roofs with half-hipped roof verges to the front and to the rear. Significantly, the plot coverage has also been significantly improved. The existing buildings cover an area of 143 square metres. The dismissed flats covered an area of 192 square metres, and the current proposals cover a reduced area of just 171 square metres, all on a site of 570 square metres. This results in a coverage ratio of just 30%. This site coverage ratio compares favourably with the prevailing pattern development. For example, the adjoining bungalow at number 534 has a footprint of 97 square metres on a site of 264 square metres, resulting in a site coverage of 36%. The proposed house H1, closest to number 534, will be set back from the existing bungalow building line to improve the relationship with the neighbouring bungalow. The inspector's report dismissed the flatted scheme. He accepted that the site was wide enough and that the building of flats would not appear cramped. The main concern was the height of the building and the appearance for the flats. Given the above reduction in height, the detached separation and the significantly improved site coverage.
Can you sum up now, please?
We feel it is reasonable to assert that these proposals cannot be considered to be cramped or overdevelopment. I'll leave that there. We're here to answer questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions to the applicant and agent or members? No? Go on to questions by members. Councillor Franks and Councillor Bridgen.
To be honest, I think before I can give serious consideration to this application, I'd need to know a lot more about the involvement of the council in the land ownership. Can somebody enlighten us, please?
Yes, I mean, shall I answer? Can I speak on that?
In somebody who can speak on the council's behalf. Can you explain that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the application forms, and it's certificate B has been signed, which declares that there is more than one owner on this site, but maybe the agent can confirm the situation.
Can you?
Yes, I'd like to explain that. So I think what the confusion that's arisen there is that when we submitted the application, validation came back to us and asked us to complete certificate B on the basis that because we were building hard up against the boundary edge, that rainwater goods and a gutter might overhang the red line. And we did discuss this at the time, thinking this was, you know, a bit over the top, but we said, okay, we conceded and signed certificate B. Now there is an issue that was raised earlier by someone saying that the title plan and the red line of this don't appear to be exactly the same. There is the application site doesn't comprise of two parcels of land, one which is on the land registry and one which isn't. So when they've seen the title plan, there is an anomaly there. But the applicant is in control of all of the land within the red line.
Okay, Stephen.
Thank you. For those that don't know, I'm the planning solicitor for the council. I knew nothing about this site until what I've just heard. Provided the vote certificate has been served, and I believe it has, notwithstanding the points made about gutters and so on, I think that was the correct call to make. Land ownership itself, other than the certificate being issued, who is in actual control of the site isn't relevant to making a decision as to whether planning permission can be granted. If it transpired there was someone else that did own this site, I'm speaking a little bit hypothetically now because the vote certificate has been served, but if there was someone that said, no, you may have your permission, but you're not building on this site because I own it, that'd be a private matter for those people to determine, not for this planning committee. Thank you, Chair.
David, has your question been answered?
No, I think we've got to get this issue resolved first. I understand exactly what the solicitor is saying, but in the end, I mean, if the two individuals were involved, then that would be, for me, I understand, as the solicitor says, not a planning issue. But I think we need to take particular care where it involves the council, because there is quite clearly a possibility of a prejudicial interest which has not been declared. I really think we need a proper explanation of exactly where the council is or isn't involved. This isn't like two individuals, there's the council, and we are here representing the council, and I think we need to get that point clarified. We've got to defer this and get that point absolutely ironed out.
Yes, Stephen, you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. Right. If the council happens to own parts of this site, then in terms of the scheme of delegation, it's correct that such an application comes to committee, which it has. So that box is ticked. The second point is unless any of you have an interest to declare, there is no one in terms of the decision makers being the councillors that are involved in the sale of that land. And if the answer to that is no, I don't see how there's a prejudicial interest in you making a completely impartial decision that has nothing to do with the land interest and potential land transaction that the council may or may not be involved in. Thank you, Chair.
Well, come on, just a minute. Are we saying that we should not be concerned that the involvement of the council has been either accidentally or deliberately concealed from us? I mean, it's a material fact as far as I'm concerned. If the council has an interest, even if it's only the guttering hanging over the footpath, we should be told that. And I'm absolutely not going to take. Be careful what I say here. I'm not going to be advised by someone representing the applicant. I think we need the facts.
Back in
For the avoidance of doubt, I don't know who that comment was targeted at, but I'm not representing anyone except trying to protect the council's interests and advising the members. Second point, land assembly is not a relevant material consideration in terms of making a decision on the planning merits of this case. If, and I'm repeating myself, if there happens to be a land interest that prevents the development from actually coming out the ground, then that is an issue that's a private matter. From my perspective, from what I've heard, in terms of certificate B being rightly served because of the overhanging, and this item being before you to make a decision, you're all silent when I asked the question, has there been any interest whereby you're involved somehow with the actual land transaction? There was no answer to that. If there were, then I would say those members should excuse themselves because of potential prejudicial interest. I'm not surprised the answer to that is no, but I thought I'd ask the question. I don't see how the property aspect has any bearing on making a planning decision on the merits or disadvantages of this case before you. Thank you, Chair.
So am I right in thinking what you're saying, Stephen, is there is no legal impediment to stop us determining this application this evening?
Not from everything I've heard, and you'll have to forgive me. It's all literally news to me as we've been going through the last 10 minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hussain, Mahmood Hussain.
Just, I think you clarified the legal, from what understanding I had from the barrister very recently when we were given the training, was that when you're making a planning decision, it's based on the planning, not who owns the land. That was very clear. You know, somebody could put it on planning application on my back garden and they may not own it. The decision has to be made, the planning issue, not if I owned it or not. Does anybody in this room, members who have any interest owning that land, they should declare it and not participate. Now, if I understand it right, that is the case. No member has declared any interest. So isn't that clear? Have I got that right?
Pretty much, just 2 points, if I may. Firstly, the most basic example I've used in the training I've given is I can make a planning application on Buckingham Palace if I wanted to, but I doubt the residents would let me build on it because I don't own it. You get my point. The second point is, and the one I was asking to which I was silenced, is that yes, obviously, if any of you owned the site, there would clearly be a disclosable pecuniary interest. But from my understanding, it's that the council owns potentially part of this site. I've not checked the land registry to determine that myself, sat here. But if the council happens to own a piece of that land, provided none of you have been involved in that transaction with that hat on as part of I don't know if it's parks and might own it or highways or whoever it might be, provided none of you have been involved in those dealings, then there's no bias or prejudicial interest because none of you have been involved in that decision to sell or otherwise that piece of land. It's a bit like when we sold Power Court to Luton Town Football Club, similar division, if you recall the advice I gave a few years ago. Thank you, Chair. I honestly have nothing further to add.
I think you've clarified it, Stephen, as far as I'm concerned. Councillor Lee Bridgen, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just looking at the 3D diagram, it looks as if there's a window on the top floor of property H1. On the top floor of property H1, on the side, which overlooks 534 Hitchin Road. I can't tell from the plan, and I can't see any conditions about that window either being slightly frosted or unopenable to prevent overlooking of the neighbouring property. I'd just like to seek clarification and whether a condition should indeed be added.
You're right, if it happens again. Anybody answer that question?
Sorry, do you mean the Velux window that's on the roof, in the roof form?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
That window is considered a high level window. So in terms of overlooking, in my opinion, there wouldn't be any overlooking of that window.
I was thinking more overlooking from that window into the neighbouring property.
As I say, because it's a high level Velux window, where it would be in the roof form, I can't imagine there wouldn't be any looking out of it. It's merely within the roof form.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my other question, I know might be, I'll try another speak.
Yeah, just move.
Hello, is that better? Okay, my other comment really, actually it's more of a comment than a question, but I do share the concerns I think raised by Councillor Wynne in relation to the number of parking spaces and the amenity space. I can see once these properties have been occupied and so on, that those front gardens will turn into additional parking spaces, and that will in turn result in the amenity space being below the appendix. I can't remember what appendix it is though, but below the minimum amenity space mentioned in the appendix, appendix 6. So that's another concern I have about this.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bridgen, for that question. In terms of the parking, as the scheme was being considered, we were continually discussing the proposals with our highway officer, who originally, you'll remember the site had 2 parking spaces per unit. It was his suggestion that it should be reduced to 1 parking space. He was happy with that. Yes, it does create more amenity space. And you are right, once permission is granted, there's no guarantee that anyone will retain that as amenity space. But that's the situation with most sites. You know, once permission is granted, your very own house, if you live in a house, you can change that into something other than your garden space, and it would no longer be your garden space. So that principle applies anyway. But in terms of your other concern about space standards, these 3 houses meet all the space standards, and these are the nationally described space standards, and they exist to help planning officers, councils, to gauge whether a development is overdevelopment or not. And in this case, all 3 new homes meet all the national space standards, and which is a good indication. I think we saw the slide earlier on, which overlaid the existing bungalow, the rejected scheme at appeal, and the current scheme. So this slide here, and you can see the floor space in terms of footprint. The blue rectangles indicate the proposed houses. It takes up less floor space than the previous scheme, which was refused on appeal, and indeed the existing bungalow. And earlier on, we heard members of the public mention the tree. The tree itself is actually further away, or I should say the development, the proposed development is further away than the existing building, the existing bungalow. So there should be no impacts on that tree at all. And I think we heard the architect say that in terms of floor space coverage, this site, I believe, in terms of the proposals, covers 30% of the site, whereas the neighbour with their bungalow covers 36% of their site. So if we compare the two, it should be an indication of whether this is an overdevelopment or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. David Agley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wynne raised the issue of the sizes or the dimensions of the room that is small. Is anybody able to clarify whether the sizes meet the national guidelines or this would be legal in terms of room sizes? Thank you.
I think, Sonny, you just...
Clear. So are you saying it is illegal dimension, not below, yeah?
Thank you, Councillor. The scheme is fully compliant in terms of space standards, in terms of room sizes and overall dwelling size and garden area as well.
And the car parking meets our minimum standard.
Yes, our parking standards are maximum. So it fully complies in terms of that. It doesn't exceed our maximum standards for these new dwellings.
It's fully compliant with national and local policies. Okay. Any comments? Councillor Hussain, Mahmood Hussain. I thought
Question or comment?
Comments now. Unless you got a question, I thought we'd finished on questions.
I just wanted to comment here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Got any comments?
Yeah. Can I just say, in light of what we had a debate a little while earlier in terms of flats. So, I mean, from the previous application, I remember that clearly. And from flats to houses, I think this is certainly an improvement. Certainly, you know, the 3-bedroom would have been ideal, but 2-bedroom also can be a family house, and it does meet the requirement, national requirement in terms of the size of the room, but also in terms of parking. You know, 2 parking spaces ideal, but in light of the need of the housing in the town and the number of people that are waiting for a family houses is, you know, it is very high, and this would be meeting some of the needs of the people that are on the waiting list, as well as people that can afford to buy houses in Luton. So I would certainly be supporting it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Kershid.
Thank you, Chair. I understand there's a significant number of people are against this proposal, but the reason I'm supporting this proposal is that, you know, the Luton is dire need of more housing, and we need to understand that. That's, you know, earlier where, you know, people are against for more flats being built. So here the proposal is a 2-bed house and with the parking. So I think we should, personally, I would support the proposal. Thank you.
I mean, it seems ironic that the first application was complaining about too many flats in the town. We should have more houses. Now we've got more houses. People are complaining it shouldn't be so. Anyway, any further comments? Councillor Franks.
Yeah, there are two issues still for me. The first is there is, if you talk to people as you move around the town, as we all do, I'm sure, there is huge suspicion when the council itself is an applicant for planning consent. Huge suspicion. The problem here is not the council being an applicant, because clearly it isn't. The issue here is that the council has an involvement about which we have not been told. And I don't find that acceptable at all, because it increases the suspicion, however minimal the council's involvement is. When that suspicion is already there, then having an involvement and not revealing it increases the suspicion, and that worries me. That worries me quite a lot. As far as the actual development itself is concerned, I really think 2 3-bedroom houses would be much more appropriate on this site. I'm struggling to find reasons why this particular application should be, that's planning reasons, why the application should be refused. But I'm convinced that 2 3-bedroom houses would be a much more appropriate development.
Any further comments? There being no further comments, then the recommendation is to approve. I mean, the application has been amended several times and the agent has complied with the planning officer's requests. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions. Is that seconded? Okay, Eunice, we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with Councillor Adley.
4.
Councillor R. Ahmed.
4.
Councillor Bridgen.
Abstain.
Councillor Chowdhury. Oh, it's apologies, isn't it? Sorry about that. Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor M. Hussein. Councillor Khurshid. 4. Sorry, is that 4? Thank you. Councillor Masood.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Thank you, Chair.
So that is carried.
That's
So
carried.
planning
That's 6
permission.
against 1.
That's carried. So planning permission has been granted, subject to the various conditions. Thank you very much. That being the extent of the business tonight. Have a happy Christmas.